Hello everybody watching and welcome to Jamflix and Chill for Awful Winter Jam 2018. Today we've got with us co-host Xibanya.
Hey everybody.
Raujinn with Oh Darn, the Time Machine We Stole Has Gone Haywire.
Hi.
And Alligator with Molasses.
Hello.
First game up on the docket is Oh Darn, the Time Machine We Stole Has Gone Haywire. I'm going to go ahead and get that started.
All right, I'm excited to see this one because I have not played it yet.
Raujinn, you want to tell us a bit about it? Wait, let me read the full title here. Oh darn, the time machine we stole has gone haywire, and now me and my brother are stuck in another dimension with weirdos from history. The game.
It's succinct. I like it.
This is the I ran out of time and couldn't think of a title. Just a quick check. I'm supposed to be watching the mixer, yeah?
Yes.
Cool. Alright, so yeah, as you see, you fly in on your time machine that you stole from your grandpa. You know, every grandpa's got a time machine. And yeah, you grab your time crystal and you get the heck out of there. That over there is a Tesla on a mechanical pigeon.
Because apparently
Tesla really liked pigeons.
I remember watching the drunk history about that, where he died.
This art is so cute, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, he is really straddling that robo pigeon.
Heck yeah! Once upon a time, he was actually a stealth enemy. Like he'd have a vision cone in front of him, and he'd chase you around the level if he spotted you. But I think after the second playtest I did with Sub Super, that's the way I'm going to say it.
Heathen.
I just didn't feel like it worked. Like for this level in particular, like you've got these very specific patrol paths that the enemies take. Which, you know, creates a little, I guess kind of a little time challenge or something along those lines. And what would happen is they would chase you, and after they either gave up chasing you or they eliminated you, the patrols would be all out of whack, and it just didn't feel good. Never mind that there wasn't really good feedback for them seeing you. They didn't have a vision cone or anything, so I felt it was kind of hard to guess whether or not you'd be seen or not. Like, I sort of got used to it after playing it a bunch, but, you know, that's one of those things. I'm the developer. I'm going to get used to that. I know roughly where the hitbox is. So it's just something I didn't think would work. Probably. Hey, little skull man.
He just keeps following me.
He will. He's basically a boo.
He really I remember my first time through. It did take me a little bit to get down how exactly they work, because sometimes I was pressing up to look at him and get him to stop, and he just kept following me, and I'm like, "Go away, skull, go away."
Yeah, so they only actually function on the left and right direction. So it's like if you're facing right, if your facings are opposite to each other, they'll sit still. Otherwise, they'll chase you. And I decided to go with that because you can't really look up and down in this. You're sort of fixed to running left and right. So that's the only real visual feedback I could really work with. Oh, right, you're going to have to lure him out of the way of that.
What did you use for your animation? Were you using Spine? I
was just drawing in Critter, pretty much.
Critter, what's that?
It's a... how should I describe it? It's like a Photoshop, but more for artists, I guess. Like, I've been using GIMP for the longest time, and GIMP is great, but GIMP's kind of got a awkward workflow for creating drawings and everything. So I gave Critter a try, I guess about 2 or 3 months ago, something like that. And like, I got used to it so quickly, it was ridiculous. Like credit to those guys. They created a really nice interface.
Huh. Because I've been using Clip Studio a lot lately for similar reasons of it's just much better for illustrating than Photoshop. I'd be curious now to know how Critter stacks up next to Clip Studio.
I guess similarly, but in the opposite direction, because I've never used Clip Studio.
Well, it's cool. I recommend it, but now I'm really curious about Critter.
Yeah, Critter's got a animation timeline feature, which is slightly buggy, but it does do the job surprisingly well, despite that. Right, so I suppose just say, once upon a time, this game was kind of a bit more freeform rather than the smaller, more puzzle-focused levels that you've got going on right now. And a lot of the features that I had to end up dropping were because there were features that were kind of planned for that map style, but they didn't really work in this smaller one that I've gone with in the end. And I think the only real remaining feature now is the thing in the bottom right corner of the screen, which is a little compass which points towards the current objective, or the nearest objective, at the very least. Like, that made sense on a really large map, but I kind of left it in because there's some maps where the crystal is off screen, so it's still handy to know where it is.
It is super handy when there's a bunch of crystals lying about. Like, I noticed that it was pretty helpful in the what's that stage with the 4 Teslas on the pigeons, and there's 4 crystals.
Right. Yeah. I think the game was originally going to be a bit more Toe Jam and Earl, so it was kind of just wandering about, trying not to die and picking up random stupid items.
How many frames per second is the running animation of the character?
I think 12.
That's pretty good.
I think 12 FPS was sort of the standard that I was running with for most of the animations in this. There's a few that are higher frame rate. Like, I think the run animation with shoes.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, these guys are based on the somewhat adequate. I was trying to remember the name of these, like the Hegasan scrolls or something, otherwise known as Japanese fart scrolls.
What?
Oh, that's
like, you didn't make that up. That's a real thing.
No, I didn't make that up. That's a real thing. Yep. There's a series of ancient Japanese illustrations of people farting on each other and having fart fights.
As they are wont to do.
Wow. You know, the more I learn about Japan, the more fucked up I think it is. No disrespect to Japan.
I think this level originally, it was just to introduce the fact that you could block off a Cthulhu with a push block. But I was like, I've had enough levels where where I'm just introducing a singular mechanic. So I just tried to let's add some of the old stuff in there as well, just to mix it up.
You know, you've got pretty good progression in here as far as introducing mechanics.
Yeah, I was gonna praise you for that, because I think that's something a lot of people forget in these jam games is, well, yeah, that sort of tutorialization without words.
Right. Well, in this case, I think I had a slight advantage because I had a bunch of mechanics for the old idea, but well, the old idea kind of just didn't pan out. Like, I had this playground of mechanics, but there wasn't a game for any of it. And I realized I didn't introduce any of those mechanics there either. I was like, I don't know, maybe part of the thinking process is like, maybe give people a trial by fire or something, but I decided to, seeing as I was going to have smaller puzzle-focused maps, I figured I've got to introduce these mechanics before I then throw the player into a level, which then puts them to the test.
I can't help but notice that this is all very default Unity UI stuff.
I'm afraid so.
Such beautiful art, and then you used Arial.
I kind of ran out of time.
Well, I can understand that.
I mean, that's why the Tesla's not animated or colored either. That's also why I ended up just using the default Unity panel with just the default font for the dialogue boxes.
It was probably
and not even
dialogue
dialogue animations or anything.
Because doing UI stuff always takes way more time than you think it will, because it's like one thing to have a working UI, it's another thing to just keep tweaking it till it's perfect, and that's a whole rabbit hole.
Oh man, I had to drop a bunch of the UI as well. Like, you see you see all that panel space at the bottom of the screen, which just has the counter and the thing at the red side.
It's there was some more Spartan UI.
There used to be a life counter in the bottom left, but again, it was one of those things where it's like, it didn't feel good letting the player like take damage and then like iframing through stuff, especially on a really small map.
Oh, that's true.
So it's like, well, if the player's going to die in one hit, they obviously don't need a life bar, so I got rid of that. There used to be a inventory, but well, again,
I remembered seeing that during development.
On a bigger map yeah, I liked that inventory. It worked pretty nicely, I thought. But I had to drop it because it didn't really make sense anymore.
So I can see that you've got a deliberately chosen palette, seeing that the girl's shirt, I'm assuming that's girl, matches the rocket. It's a very interesting palette because it's a lot of very muted, desaturated colors. What was the rationale behind choosing this palette?
I wish I had a clever rationale, but I do not. It was just, I liked the colors. I picked some colors and...
That's good enough?
I want to say, and this is slightly sad, but I want to say that there was a uniform that an MMO character I was playing as was wearing. I kind of liked the color scheme on it. I might have subconsciously stolen it.
Well, what is it? Apparently Picasso said, bad artists copy, good artists steal.
I think also... Obviously this doesn't show here because there's no level art. But once upon a time, I had drawn up a concept picture for what I wanted the level to look like, and it was essentially going to be a sort of interpretation of what is it? Dali's the picture with the melting clocks. I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Oh, the persistence of memory.
That's the one. I never remember the name of it. My mind always goes to time. It's like time's not actually in the title of it, despite the fact there's clocks all over the place.
It's the Clock Desert one. That's how I remember it.
But it was going to be like that, but instead of obviously like yellow and stuff, it was going to be more dark purpley tones, and it was essentially going to be in the middle of a void of space time. So it was just, I think it was just stars. So yeah, the player character and the ship color, and the color of the gems and whatnot, that all contrasted with that, and I thought that worked. But unfortunately, no level art was made in the end. Like again, these push blocks would have like stood out really strongly against that color scheme.
And are you going to keep working on this game?
I don't know. Like
the art is gorgeous. Like I love the character art. It's very charming.
Thank you very much. I think I ended up going into the jam kind of wanting to play with art, possibly more than the game itself, and that's how things ended up. Whether or not that's exactly how I wanted it. But yeah, I'd done a bunch of pixely stuff before, and there's nothing wrong with pixel art. You can do some freaking fantastic things with pixels. And as have people done within this very jam itself. But I just wanted to try something different. I wanted to see if I actually could pull off a game with hand-drawn art, and it seems like I could. It's got a bit more of a time overhead than pixel art, which is one of the reasons that a lot of people go for it.
I don't know. I feel like because I've done games in pixel art and I've done games in non-pixel art, and pixel art can have its own time-consuming aspects of it, depending. I feel like the smaller the pixel art, the more time-consuming it is.
Probably is, because you're going to have a bit of a harder time picking out certain details.
Well, it's at that point where you're relying on
details, even
the human eye to blur the pixels to see things that aren't literally there. But
right. That's one of the pluses of pixel art as well, just like depending a bit on imagination.
I know whenever I'm trying to aim for doing pixel art, I usually tend to at least try to accentuate any main features first and then drop in small details after.
Right. I think one of the...
I don't know, the smaller it is, I find it a lot easier, because then I'm like, alright, they need an eye. Here's a dot. Yeah. I'm done.
Well, then you get into things like you can suggest certain lines or curves that aren't actually there by using pixels that are not actually the color that the player will perceive, using sort of a trompe delay illusion, but that's getting into annoying things.
Oh yeah, that's probably getting to a level much higher than my art.
It's not like I'm even very good at pixel art. I didn't even know that you were an animator. Now I really want to check out your work, Raujinn.
I'm afraid I don't have a lot of animation work. It's a longish story. I don't know if I really want to go on to it on stream, but say I kind of got
want to hear this longish story
for
eventually.
A lot of years. Yeah, sure. It might come up.
Here or somewhere else.
Yeah, feel free to chat.
Well, I mean, I originally went to university for animation, so I was doing a lot of drawings. I don't think I really stopped drawing, but I kind of, I don't know. I like I said, I kind of got disillusioned with it at some point and sort of stopped and started chasing up other avenues.
Approaching Infinity, I was going to say, a fellow game dev of yours in the SA game dev community, Approaching Infinity, I think also went to college for animation, and now is a game dev. Yep.
Yeah.
So apparently it's not an uncommon trajectory.
I've been tooling around a bit with the implementation of Sonic 1 physics in Unity, and it's a pretty good implementation.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah, I have heard that someone has open sourced or figured out the Sonic code, and I looked at it. It was like in assembly or some shit. It looked really complicated. So if you can recreate that, I'm very impressed.
So that should be the Sonic Retro physics guide. I think
they have a wonderful guide. That's some great just side
really
reading that you can do
with what the original devs did.
Yeah, Oh, sorry, go for it.
How many levels are in this game? Like, I'm not sure. Is Dieting Hippo actually heading towards any kind of goal here?
He's been repeating the game.
Oh yeah, I've gone through it.
I was going to say, this is starting to get repetitive.
No, he finished the game a lot ago. There's about 12 levels, I think.
Okay. Well, now I feel that's like insane. I think we're repeating. Okay.
I'm going to try to see if I can bunch up these skulls here.
Oh yeah, try to find the bugs. Break the game.
I mean...
Come on, skull buddies, let's go. Oh, they're coming.
Yeah, I wonder if you can get them all in a big pile. You know what this game is missing?
A little train going.
This game's missing something.
What's that?
It's missing screen shake.
Oh, screen shake.
Ah, yes.
Got to add some life to it, some juice.
Oh, that's cute how they're all in a row and their animations weren't totally synced, so it's sort of a nice...
God, that's the way they work. Good line.
That's so cool.
Hey. Hey.
That's beautiful.
Squad goals.
And I like how they're moving in sort of a curve when they're pathfinding. It's not just...
Yeah.
Oh, they were sad I left.
Aww.
They were piling upon where the player actually is. Yeah, I think in the end I ended up doing the intro and outro animations because I felt like I wanted something to connect the levels together. Because otherwise you kind of just ran around awkwardly waiting for the scene to load. Well, added on top of that is there was no indicator that you were invincible, so enemies would keep chasing you around even after the level was complete.
Huh. This is totally random and has nothing to do with your game, but what the hell is even your avatar? I've been wondering this for months.
It's a game character.
It's some sort
it's
of
my
green-haired
avatar
anime.
In a I don't know how best to describe it. It's an MMO, but it's not really an MMO. It's one of those games where it's like it's it's massively multiplayer, but all the content's actually small instance stuff. So yeah, it's just my game character. Because
it's like Dark Souls.
It's a Seinfeld of MMOs.
Okay.
No, it's just I don't know what it was. The game's got story cutscenes, and for whatever reason, the settings I got for my character, it ends up pulling off some really stupid looking faces during this. I just take a screenshot or whenever it does it, and that's how my avatars are made.
Oh, there is a comment in the Twitch chat. How late was the heart system dropped?
I think it was actually dropped fairly early in the switch over to this side of the game. Because it just became very quickly apparent that letting the player just use hit invulnerability to get through stuff just felt kind of wrong. Like, imagine these laser fence puzzle. If you could just walk into a laser, take a hit, and then just walk through it, it kind of kills the whole point of it. I mean, of course, I could just set the lasers to be instant death, but then it's inconsistent with everything else. So there's a slight bug, but it's not really that big a deal. It's due to a fix I ended up having to do, because what would happen is you could actually soft lock the game with these push blocks. What had to happen is... You can't soft lock it anymore, I think. But what would happen is, if you got all the time gems and the Cthulhus are chasing you, if you happen to be pushing a block at the same time as they were running into one, it would actually... Cthulhu's got more strength than you have, like considerably more, so it ends up pushing the block out. And I think under certain circumstances, Cthulhu would end up like teleporting through the block. And then he wouldn't actually be able to return to a spawn. And on a couple of maps, yeah, like that. Oh no, he can still do it.
That's right, as long as I don't touch the block, we're good.
That's interesting.
You stay in there.
I'm guessing what's going on is, I think the solution I use is sort of hacky. I think it sets the rigid body to kinematic whenever anything that isn't the player is touching it.
By the way, that little death spray, it's great.
Yeah, I did have a lot of fun with the yarn this.
Oh, I'm not dying on touch. Just kind of moving them around.
That must mean his physics box, yeah. I'm going to guess that means its physics box is just slightly offset on the Y.
I bothered Cthulhu a bit too much.
A lot of Cthulhu games in this jam.
It's pretty history-y. Pre-history.
Yeah, he's an old one of sorts.
The old ones. The elder gods.
I think the only reason I went with Cthulhu, because I was like, after all these other historical guys, I was like, okay, I need somebody who's going to chase the player around when you've got all the gems. So who's going to sit there laying dormant until you've got the time gems? And somebody just suggested Cthulhu. I was like, I'm not putting Cthulhu in. And then I put Cthulhu in.
Someone in the chat says it's cool Thulu with cool capitalized.
Hey!
Cool Thulu.
And also someone else in the chat writes XB, and I'm not sure if that's an emoticon or if they have misspelled something or if they're trying to summon me somehow. It is I, Sheeb. Anya.
I think XP is finally dead. Unity's dropping support for it soon.
So was the little brother there supposed to serve anything else, or is he just tired and pooped out all the time?
No, his plot idea was he's just a lazy little arsehole who's making his sister do everything.
Oh, great.
That actually was the idea. I just didn't really get a chance to sort of portray it.
Well, it's kind of cute to have that character there because it keeps the main character from being, I don't know, totally isolated, or it grounds the character as being a quote-unquote normal person.
Right. I figured it'd be like a decent motivator.
I remember I was playing Sonic CD, and it struck me, and I don't know if this is a new like observation or not, because I played it for the first time like last year, and obviously the game's considered a classic, but I don't know jack shit about Sonic Land, Sonic people. But what really struck me was how weird and alienated and isolated you feel while playing that game, because there are like no other characters except for yourself and the robots.
Yeah, Sonic 1 is a bit the same way too. And then you got Sonic 2 coming along, you get the two-tail fox buddy.
I mean, at least in Sonic 1, you've like got little animals you're saving. And
yeah, that's the thing, is you got that in Sonic 1.
Flowers, isn't it?
Yeah, and that struck me as
that's true.
Kind of bizarre. I know I was playing it because a friend of mine who's a big fan of Sonic had given it to me with a Humble Bundle, and he was watching me play. And I was like, is this a metaphor? Like, have they all died? Is it? I don't know. He was like, no, I don't think so. But the game like struck me as really eerie because it felt like everybody had died.
Right.
They were like in some sort of freaky afterlife. I don't know. This is why I can't be in the Sonic fandom.
Are you aware of the soundtrack differences between Japan and US?
Yeah, he told me about that. I had to stop playing. I was so embarrassed that I was bad at the game, and he was watching me. I felt bad. He just wanted to enjoy something with me, and I was like, okay, we have to stop because I'm bad, and I don't want you to see me being bad.
Oh, dang. Yeah, I'm trying to remember which soundtrack it is, but it really plays to that creepy theme, because when you enter the boss fight, you get this really weird of Robotnik coming in, and it's a really unsettling theme with like minor keys everywhere.
Might have been, because I let him play after a while, because I was like, I can't do this anymore, so I gave him the controller, and I got to see a fair bit of the game's content. Because it might have been like a remaster that did have it, the Japanese soundtrack, because I know he mentioned that to me.
Oh, yeah, most likely anything that was recent for Sonic CD was by Christian Whitehead, the same guy that did Sonic Mania.
You almost triggered the other soft lock in this game, I just remembered. It was actually to get that push block stuck in a corner. And because in that particular level you can't actually die, that push block was stuck there forever.
Oh no. Wait, can I get the push block in here?
That's a good question.
Clearly what you need is a button that explodes main character into Gibbs, so you can start the level over.
Well, that was definitely the reason I, in the end, added the classic R to restart button.
But there was no explosion.
There is no explosion.
Missed opportunity for juice.
I think it just gives a boring message that it's restarting the level.
I hope you continue with this, because this is so charming.
The art is fantastic.
I think there was like a couple of issues I was thinking of that were in them. Like one of them was, I was wondering how many more levels I could do with the current mechanics that I got. And then there was others, it's like, what kind of mechanics could I play with? And I'm not that experienced at making puzzle games, so I have no real appreciation for what is going to work for, what is going to add a lot to the game and what isn't. Like, what's going to have a lot of depth and what's just going to be like a, one-off mechanic that's never seen again.
Oh, like the farting guys?
A little bit. I mean, they've got the fun that they can push you into other things, but because that could get extra annoying if I end up adding stuff like one-way blocks or something. You're trying to get through a maze and they push you through a one-way.
Ooh.
The rest is just perspective, I guess. There's a couple of perspective issues. Like those blocks, they look like they... I feel like the graphic of them probably needs to extend upwards a little bit, and the actual physics only takes up a portion of them, so it kind of sells that it's only really the ground hitbox that actually should matter, or whatever is visibly touching the ground.
Whenever you do a top-down, style map like this, there are always cheats on perspective that would never actually be realistic.
You should probably look up some of them. Because, yeah, I mean, just guessing on my own, I don't really have any idea.
DG asks, what are the pigeon guys from? I believe it's Tesla humping a pigeon. You missed the first part of the stream. You should have been paying attention, DG.
It is
D__G. I assume that if you had had time, you would have put an animation of him humping them. But
well, I don't know if I've gone to that extreme.
Just logically follows.
It would have been bucking pigeons.
God.
darn, the time machine we still has gone haywire, and now me and my brother are stuck in another dimension with weirdos from history. It's succinct, you know? Get straight to the point.
I love that the executable name for this is ODTTMWSHGHANMABASIADWWFH.
Well, it's good. It's a nice allusion to depression, decreased ability to feel pleasure, suicidal thoughts, ostriches.
What?
You don't remember Wait, hold on. I need to remember the acronym because that's how it was submitted.
It was something like that.
DDST. I don't know. Ostriches. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? I'll link it in the Twitch chat.
It has Hanmamba in it as a word. That's not really a word, but it sounds like one.
Anxiously waiting on this to show up in Twitch chat. Because I swear it would sound so familiar if I knew something about depression and ostriches.
There we go. It's DDAFPST ostriches, and I'm about to link it.
Oh, now I know what you were talking about now. It's I don't know which jam that was from.
Panic.
Oh, that was the.
It's about a bunch of ostriches eating cocaine. Trees it. It's the fuzz.
Oh, this is definitely getting a play later. Alright, well, that's this block for Oh Darn, the Time Machine We Stole has gone haywire, and now me and my brother are stuck in another dimension with weirdos from history. Thank you, Raujinn, for coming on to talk about your game.
Hey, cheers to the host.
Hey.
Thanks, Raujinn. It was awesome.
Very good chat.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Next up, we got Alligator with Molasses. Sorry, Molasses!
You have to...
Molasses!
Yeah, that's the one. Thank you. It's like Sid Meier's Pirates. It's nothing without an exclamation point.
Oh,
I also thank everybody who made pixelated versions of my lovely logo.
I stared at that for so long that I started seeing yarn just everywhere.
Well, how do you think I felt when I was making it? And right off the bat, I totally dig games. Like, I love the start where it was the conceit that you're playing it on an old-ass computer. I'm a huge sucker for that. So thank you.
Well, yes, because of that. I guess I should explain some of this game, although the wall of text you're about to read would explain some of it. Yeah, I didn't have enough confidence in my level design, so I panicked and put in some text. And it was just like, this is my get out of jail free card. Anyway, I basically stole the game mechanics from Rampart, which is it's one of those strange games that people don't really talk about, but it got ported to every possible platform under the sun, and I remember playing a lot of it on the Master System. But yeah, it's just like a strategy game where you place tetraminos and kind of have to make areas, but it's more about shooting stuff. This game is very loosely based on the Boston Molasses flood in 1919, which is, yes. I don't know why I know about that.
A terrible event.
A terrible event. I mean, it's
terrible
tragedy. A terrible event.
It is. It would be terrible to die that way, but it's still kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you weren't in the Molasses flood. Yeah, so it just has the mechanics from Rampart, and then at some point I remembered about the Molasses flood and made that the central theme. And now I get to watch you spam blocks and very, very slowly go insane.
I mean, this looks. I appreciate. There are like some quality of life things that I appreciate here, like the ghost piece and the fact that there's a sound effect when you play something down. I mean, that's important, and the fact that the ghost piece shows feedback when you're highlighting over something you shouldn't be highlighting over, or you can't put an illegal move. I appreciate that because a lot of people forget those things.
I think it would be,
especially in jams.
It would be absolutely maddening if we didn't tell you that. You'd just be clicking and nothing would be happening. You'd be like, well, I guess this is just broken. That was actually, I think, the one of the first things I made was that piece of feedback, because like I need to know when it's a valid move to know if I've programmed it correctly.
Player feedback is super, super important.
Yeah. So Yeah, I'm quite new to all of this, but yeah, stuff like that, you can just tell it's important even when you're playing it yourself. You're like, oh, if I hate something while I'm playing it, I should probably improve it because I'm the one making it. Do you have a strategy? Have you played this before? I mean,
I have in fact played this before, and I developed the pro strat where you block off the molasses first, and then you start building behind where everybody's going to go, so they don't go up against the wall and screw you over.
Yes. Yeah, originally, when I first made it, the people would move randomly, or actually they would try and run away from the molasses as opposed to running towards the flag. But they would just end up in the bottom corner of the screen, and you couldn't surround them with blocks, so you would just be like, well, I guess I'm just going to have to sit here and watch you die. Well, I can't do anything. Sorry, guys.
Is that what their AI is? They go towards the flag?
Yeah, they path towards the flag, or if they're inside a safe area, then they just stand still and they like repair walls, but they just teleport towards the walls because I did want them to path towards the walls originally, but it kind of would take too long because they don't have much time to move.
I do want to cut in.
I kind of like them. Yeah,
I love the wall block saying, "Hey, that's rude."
Yeah. I wrote this joke at 3 a.m. and I haven't had the heart to delete it. It was so
It's
stupid.
wonderful.
It made me laugh so much. There's a comment above it which actually says like warning, the worst joke is below. Yeah. I didn't know if anyone would understand what I was even trying to say, but it made me laugh, so I left it in.
Dieting Hippo, are you able to rotate those blocks yourself, or do you just have to take what you're given?
So I can rotate the blocks myself, but when I'm doing a spam, I tend not to.
I see. I haven't played
but then
this yet.
when I've got to like fine tune it, like getting wall pieces in so I don't have open diagonals, that's when I start doing rotating. My first time through, I didn't know rotating was an option, so I had a much tougher time actually placing the pieces down.
Yeah, some of those pieces are dreadful if you can't rotate them.
Yeah, there's that one that's like an L, and then it's also got like a hump on its back, and
yeah, that's the rare hexamino, I think, which is a word that I learned from the thread when someone was talking about it. Yeah, I think Rampart. Rampart has more blocks than this. It has tetraminos and it has a few others, and it has some blocks that are absolutely nasty. But that's the only one I sort of brought over from Rampart because I thought some of them are just too mean to put into this game. Just like an L shape with two lumps on the side, and you're like, what can I do with this?
Oh wow, I didn't even realize that I locked one guy in there. Right in front of the molasses.
Well, he can repair. He'll just sit there hammering on that wall and hoping he doesn't die.
Someone in the Twitch chat has the question, does the molasses grow out faster / more the bigger it is?
It does, just by virtue of there being more molasses, so every tile of molasses has a certain chance to spread, and obviously when there's more,
so it's kind of like
chance for it to spread.
Heat sim type thing or approach you took to programming that?
It's mostly random, but it actually uses the same pathfinding as the people use, but it uses it very, very infrequently. So the molasses will vaguely move towards the flag, which means that you could essentially build a maze, and the molasses will slowly flow around it if it didn't destroy the walls. But I had some fun building mazes for the molasses when I was testing out the pathing. But yeah, to make sure it can sort of get through walls, but so it's not too intelligent, because you don't just want like a creepy molasses monster reaching out its hand to, reach.
Next game, creepy molasses.
Yeah, I wanted to go. I have some notes somewhere about like I was going to go crazy and write like a cellular automata thing and have it, secretly be like the game of life behind it or something like that. But in the end, I was just like, random will do. It's good enough. By the way, this is my favorite level because it has the ducks. The ducks were another late night addition where I was writing the cutscene for this level, and I wrote a joke about saving ducks, and I was like, "What if you're saving ducks?" And I drew the duck, and I couldn't not do it.
I'm finding the art for this really charming, and I have the same question for you that I had for Raujinn. What was the rationale behind the palette you picked?
So I was originally I'll go back and explain. This is for the TIC-80, which is a fantasy console. So I have a 16-color palette that I'm limited to, and 240 by 136 resolution and 8x8 sprites. And I was using the default TIC-80 palette for a while, and I wasn't very happy with the look of the game. It just felt a bit... It just didn't feel very cohesive. It was just kind of random. And So I went for a walk, which is my #1 game development tool, is going for a walk.
I respect that.
Yeah, and I thought about the game Raid on Bungling Bay, if you know that game.
No, I don't know it.
It's Will Wright's first game. It's a Commodore 64 game. No. Yeah, but it's a Commodore 64 game. And it has... it's a really interesting game. There's a really good GDC talk about him by Will Wright about that game if you want to watch it. It's really fascinating. And it's kind of some of the ideas from it about using a map editor was where he got the idea for SimCity. But anyway, it's a Commodore 64 game, and it has a lot of kind of real world, like top-down kind of visuals, because you're meant to be like a helicopter flying over a bunch of islands and some bays to kind of blow up factories and stuff. And so for some reason that the look of that game just appealed to me, and I was like, I'm going to pick the Commodore 64 palette and take some inspiration from that game. And just picking a consistent palette really helps a lot when you're making a game, because it makes a lot of decisions for you. When you've got 16 colors and you're like, what color should this thing be? You just have to pick, an appropriate color. And if you can't find one, tough luck, you have to make it work. And yeah, for me personally, I have I think like a lot of people, a perennial problem with never finishing anything. And the more limitations I can put on something, the more likely I am to finish it. So 16 colors is about my limit. Any more than that, and I'm just paralyzed by choice.
But I've been really enjoying the art for this game. It seems very effective, and it's very clear what's going on, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I tried to keep it nice and simple. Although I do. Have you seen the duck repairing? It's my favorite. Well, when I say animation, it's 2 frames because the duck just opens its beak when it's standing next to the wall and makes a quack sound, I think, instead of the normal like tink. That was
they're fighting for their lives. Yeah. They're willing to do some repairs.
And I'm loving these little cutscenes. They're very charming.
Yeah, I wasn't. I was quite happy with the cutscenes. I wasn't sure whether I was going to add them or not, but then I thought like it's not really the only thing to do with the theme would be the kind of molasses flowing. So yeah, I'm not very much of a writer, so I write as little as possible, and I think they work okay.
Well, it's not like a game like this really needs a grand sweeping narrative.
What? No, that's right.
I mean, what's the Molasses' motivation?
Run, you fools, run.
No, that's the guy's motivation, not the Molasses' motivation. Clearly, the Molasses is some sort of malevolent.
It just wants to be the sweetest of disasters. Really, yeah.
Well, that's my headcanon now.
That's my favorite. I like that tag. I think someone else said that. Yeah, maybe Tom R said that, and I just really liked it, so I've just used it anywhere I can.
Hey, man, it's the collaborative game development process.
I just really enjoy seeing what people's strategies are, because I developed the whole game. Basically, I think me and you have the same strategy of block off the molasses and then basically build a big wall. John Turp's strategy seemed to be left click as much as possible and deal with the consequences later, which was it was fun to watch, but it was also like nails on a chalkboard. I was like, you could slow down. But it is fun because I know that you can do quite well if you really work on enclosing people as soon as possible and just relying on them repairing walls. That works quite well too. It's interesting because I never really had much of a plan for designing this. I just kind of threw together things and saw what happened. And when I started, getting frustrated and excited at my own game, I thought, okay, I probably got something here. But it's interesting to see what people actually come up with because I really didn't have a idea of what strategies might work, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting when you see people trying stuff that you never intended. And that's a big benefit of getting your game tested, because then when people are playing it and you're like, I didn't even think of doing that, you can maybe try incorporating that into the game itself.
Oh yeah, one of the best feelings in the world is discovering your game has greater depth of gameplay than you actually thought it did.
I would say one of the greatest feelings was when John Turp surrounded the entire map in molasses and the pond in the middle, or the fountain in the middle of this stayed there, because I was thinking, I have no idea what's going to happen when he surrounds them with molasses.
That pond is evil.
All right, here's okay, theory time. The molasses is actually misunderstood. It's actually good. The pond is evil, and it's trying to save the world by destroying the pond.
I mean, I buy it. I didn't really think about the molasses motivation, but...
Alright, I think I got this round. I just need to build a wall between the people and that fountain, and I'm good.
How many more levels are there?
This is the last one.
Ah, okay. Oh, it's the final one. It's the final one.
It's the final one. Everyone gets to City Hall, apparently. I never really, you know, when you, so it doesn't, plot holes don't really matter in this game, but you know when there's a plot hole and you just selectively decide not to think about it? I don't know how the people actually escape when they're in this enclosed area surrounded by molasses, but they apparently do and will get to City Hall.
Well, that's when the National Guard comes in and airlifts them out or something.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say, like, shoot the molasses.
Shoot. Actually,
that's true. That'd be very American.
I was going to do that. They did. They figured out that salt water was
oh, no.
At, oh, no, the diagonal got you. They figured out that salt water was good at cleaning off the molasses, so they shot saltwater cannons at it and washed it all down the drains, which I was originally thinking about doing. I was going to have like a combat phase. I just kind of never got around to trying to even implement it. But I thought that might be fun if the dudes shot, I guess, salt water at the molasses.
I like how I was technically right.
Yeah, see?
Oh, no!
Oh, God.
Oh, no!
Oh, God. Yeah, there are
the molasses got through.
That just the random number generator decides that your time is done, that I'd like to kind of smooth out a bit. I need to think about some of these things. Yeah, because that was unfortunate.
Like maybe once it breaks through, it gets a cooldown timer until it starts trying to kill again.
Well, you know, it kind of reminds me of something. I think I talked to my mom about this incident when I was in elementary school because I learned about it, and her response was, "When it's your time to go, it's your time to go." So I think that's a good thing to apply to this game.
I suppose. Although, if your time to go involves a giant wave of molasses, you're probably quite special.
There's probably worse ways to go.
Well, that's what she always says when she hears about a weird way to die.
Yeah. That disaster is really interesting because the tank is like... The tank was apparently like abysmal, like 1/3 of the thickness it needed to be, and it leaked so much they just painted it brown so people wouldn't notice. And then eventually, oh dear.
Yeah.
When the people stand on those diagonal corners of the pond, it's the most infuriating thing, and I couldn't get rid of it because I kind of like being frustrated. One of the things I kind of took inspiration from in Rampart was the like frantic nature and the frustration angle of like when you're just not getting the block you need and the time's counting down, and I kind of like that about it. And sometimes those stupid people really, really add to that quite a lot.
Yeah, I could see that being pretty fun. Well, annoying and then kind of fun as an overall.
I kind of graded it on how much I vocalized playing the game, and it turned out to be quite a lot. I spent a lot of time swearing at 8x8 sprites who weren't standing in the right position. So I thought,
because you know what, this is really neat. What is really missing is some music. Would you think about like going back and adding some music to this?
Yeah, so one of the issues is
they did.
Yeah, they did.
The RNG was not friendly to me.
Yeah, so this is the second game I've made. I made one game last year. That was like the first thing I made. And I made it using the Pico 8, which is another fantasy console, a much more well-known one. And that has like quite nice, so it's all still, if you want to be reductive, it's all still bleep bloop music. But it has really nice music creation tools, like it has a decent tracker. It has a really good way of making sound effects that can be as complicated or as simple as you like. And I kind of foolishly assumed that the TIC 80, which is what this is written for, would have something similar, and I kind of put off the music for a while and was like, I'll get to that when I get to it. It'll be like one day I'll just do it all. And then when I started trying to use the creation tools for music in the TIC 80, they're very different, and I I couldn't even get some of the basic sounds I wanted out of it. So I there's 2 songs in the game, and they were about the best I could do in the day I gave myself. I would really like some background music during the game, to be honest, but I just ended up having to throw the towel in on that. I have mixed feelings about the TIC-80. I enjoyed making this project in it, but I don't think I'd ever want to use it again, whereas the Pico 8 I enjoyed quite a bit more. The TIC-80 doesn't seem to be ready for prime time. I had to... so the version you're playing here is built with my own version of the TIC-80 because I had to go and modify the source to get it to do some things I wanted it to. Like, it's not quite there for kind of actually trying to get a game that other people can reliably play.
So I don't know much about this fantasy console. Is it in active development?
This specific one?
Yes.
Yeah, it's actually, the developer of it he's really good. So yeah, it's open source. I think you can pay like $5 to get the pro version or something.
It's
open source.
I was going to say, maybe you're contributing to this game fantasy console just by making things for it.
Yeah. But the developer's really active on GitHub, and he fixed a issue in the middle of the game jam that I was having with 120 hertz, which is why you should playtest your game, because along comes Super with his 120 hertz monitor and spoils your day. 32 people and 6 ducks. Well done.
That's a good amount of people saved.
Yeah, that is actually. That's quite a lot.
I appreciate the separate duck counter.
It's in Twitch chat. Did you run into any memory limitations or timing issues or anything like that?
Not with this. I'm using, so the TIC-80 has a limit on cartridge sizes. I'm using about 3/4 of the limit, so I still have a decent amount of space left.
That's not bad.
Timing issues, not really. I was having, so one of the reasons I had to modify the TIC-80 itself is because he added a really annoying feature where it would show like a red sync label in the corner if one of your frames was taking greater than 16 milliseconds. And occasionally my frames just do because it's calculating stuff or whatever, and I don't really mind because this is a game that a lot of the time it doesn't matter if one frame takes longer than that, so I had to like modify that and remove it, but other than that I didn't really have any problems with it. It like when I say fantasy console, it is limited, but in like ways that make it more fun, as opposed to just being like, oh, you only get like a kilobyte of code, you know.
That I do like the artificial limitation aspect, because whenever I'm trying to do my games in a certain style, I mean, you know, back-end code, it's all like C++, but on the front end, I still at least try to aim for visual accuracy. So like Missile Champions, it was supposed to be NES, and I had a limited palette for everything. You know, your 3 colors, transparent, black, and like 2 other ones. And it really leads to much more interesting choices trying to work around that.
Yeah, I really think it for me, it's kind of, at this point in me making games, it's kind of the keystone to me actually finishing them, because otherwise I think I would just spend too long on individual details. So being able to be limited in kind of every sense of that is really useful for me personally. And the palette stuff, yeah, like I said earlier, it forces you to make decisions, especially when you've got 8x8 sprites. You're like, there's only so many places I can place this one pixel. Here or here. Okay, the first place is better. That's it. By the way, just a small note, but on the credit screen, I give special thanks to Sponge. I just want to give Sponge a shout out so I streamed all of the development of this game from empty text file to this. And he was watching it pretty much all the way, and he gave me lots of it's really useful to have someone, especially, so I just had the text editor and the game open, and it's really useful to have someone else just like looking at it and being like, you've written the stupidest code I've ever seen in my life.
Pair programming.
Yeah, it's like internet pair programming, but he also came up with lots of like good little ideas and little bits of polish. So
that's awesome.
Shouts out to Sponge.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah. I also sorry, I'm stumbling. The last game I made was for the GitHub Game Jam in November, and I had fun doing that. Yeah, I had fun doing that, but it kind of felt like I was just throwing my game into bucket, like just a featureless void. Like, I guess I made it and here it is, because I didn't really find much community around it. But
I have a similar feeling.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I had a similar feeling looking at Ludum Dare, because I keep hearing about it, and then I see that there's like a million entries, and I'm like,
yeah, that's why I'm never going to enter that jam.
But I felt exactly the same way about the GitHub Jam, by the way. I took part in the 2016 one, and again, it really is just like throwing your game into a void.
Yeah, I mean, I did well in it, but I was just like, but it was also, it's really motivating in this jam, like I say, having Sponge watching it, but also just being able to share it and being able to like talk about it is like, because if you don't feel like maybe like, because I'm a software developer as my day job, and I spend my day writing JavaScript, and this game is written in JavaScript. So I come home and look at JavaScript, I'm like, I'm not going to do this. And then you read the Discord and see people posting their game, and it's really inspirational to actually keep you doing it. And so I found it really valuable to actually interact with the community around the game jam, whereas before I'd be like, I'm just going to go and make my thing on my own, like Luke Skywalker the Hermit, and like come back afterwards and be like, here's my masterpiece. And it really doesn't work.
It's a big motivator to me too. And also, well, one thing I really love about this jam is the fact that like you're guaranteed at least one person's going to play the game because it's judged. Some judge is going to play it, but yeah, I wouldn't keep coming back to it if it weren't for the awesome community.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Oh yeah. Also, more props to Sponge. He figured out how to get a fairly believable quack sound effect in Tick 80, which is probably the largest task that I undertook. So, just to give you some perspective on the Tick 80, so in the Pico 8, I realize these two names are quite confusing, but in the Pico 8, it's got a fairly simple music editor, right? You can pick a sound effect and you say, oh, this is a square wave, and it's got modulation, or it fades it, or whatever, and then you can use it in the tracker. And it has like a bunch of built-in waves. Waves. You could be like noise or triangle or whatever. The Tick 80 is kind of crazy because you have to draw your own waveform on a grid. Like, you've just got a freeform grid and a pencil tool. So if you want a triangle wave, you just have to draw a triangle wave. But that means that I couldn't get a good sounding triangle wave. And I'm sitting there looking at my triangle, like, I've drawn a perfect triangle. I don't understand how to fix this. So trying to get like a duck quack sound effect out of something where you have to draw your own waveforms was quite difficult. And as far as I know, he just randomly drew stuff and kept playing it until he got something that he said sounded like a goose, and then he changed it until it sounded like a duck.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm not sure if I'm going to continue working on this this specific game, but I do like the mechanics of it, and I would rather implement it in something a bit more featureful. But the diagonals always drive me crazy. That's one thing I think I do want to fix on the public version of this, because
this round
has problems with the diagonals.
I was hunting around for a bit, going, "Where's that diagonal? Where is this not closing up?"
Over time, you get like you can sense a disturbance in the force, and you're like, oh, I know there's a diagonal missing somewhere, and you just sort of know where it is. But I think that comes from having played too much of the game.
I gotta say, this level is especially brutal just because you have these guys that start so close to the molasses.
Yeah, I kind of... I would be lying if I said I did anything like level design. I just placed them around and saw how it played. And those two people are normally casualties in this level. It's rare to save them. But I tried to make it so you don't have to... I mean, you don't have to save everyone unless you really want to try. There should probably be a reward for saving everyone, actually.
Like a little medal or something.
Yeah. Those Cheetos, man.
If I was going to extend this, I would also have you save horses, because it's notable that like some horses died in the molasses flood.
They actually wrote in the newspaper how many horses died.
Yeah, it was from the time where they wrote how many horses died.
Sponge writes, all of the Rampart ports that are playable on PC are bad in one way or another because none of them use a visible mouse cursor, so this is technically the most playable Rampart port.
Yeah, so when I was making this, Sponge got into trying to play Rampart again, and every couple of days he'd be like, I tried this one and it still sucks. Because Rampart the arcade machine is one of those ones that has like a massive trackball, because it has a mouse cursor where you're meant to be placing blocks, but it has a really strange, you don't see the mouse cursor itself, but it's still block based, but it means that you're on one block and you have to move an unknown amount to in any direction to kind of move on to the next block, because you don't see the pointer, you don't know how far that is. So it's got this really kind of I can't really describe it any other way than like when you're moving the mouse around, because you can't tell how far you have to go to move one block up, and then you move 2 blocks up and you have to try and move 2 blocks down. It's kind of, yeah, that's not the best part of that game. Thankfully this has, just modern mouse support. Although it was surprisingly difficult to get the mouse placing to feel right, because I think when you're placing a Tetris block, your mind kind of has some sort of interpretation of what block you should be pointing at, because obviously they're all different shapes. They're in a 3x3 grid, but there's no guarantee that there'll be a block in any of those particular squares. So you have to kind of decide where to put it so it makes sense and it doesn't feel horrible, because for a long time the mouse placement kind of felt horrible and I was putting it off because I was worried it would be kind of a mammoth task to get right. And yeah, it's kind of it's actually interesting how much less playable this game was when it had the bad mouse placement. It was just really unpleasant to try and place your blocks. What is it? So there's a question in the Twitch chat. Why does it jump back a frame at round end? So that was originally a bug, I think. So if you look at the Molasses, there's kind of 2 types of tile. There's the static ones with like dots, which are called inert molasses, and then there's the wavy ones, which are like flowing molasses. And originally, when I wrote the code so originally it was all just flowing molasses, and I wrote some code to turn the flowing molasses into inert molasses, just to kind of change the look of it. And I think I screwed that up, and it started removing some of them. The ones at the edge, but I kind of kept it because it creates this this thing where the molasses attacks in a wave and then retreats slightly, which gives you an opportunity to patch up the walls on the outside and around it, so it can sort of so a tile turns into inert molasses if it's surrounded on 3 or more sides by any other molasses, and inert molasses stays from round to round and flowing molasses doesn't. So that means that, like I say, first of all, it kind of flows forward and then retreats back, which gives you some space to work in. And also it means if it punches a hole through your walls and goes in a straight line, none of those tiles of molasses are surrounded on 3 sides, so they'll all sort of retreat back. So it gives you a little bit of opportunity to actually come back, even when you're kind of getting fucked over by the molasses. And I just kind of liked it enough to leave it in.
A happy accident mechanic.
Yeah, because without that, trust me, it was kind of brutal, because it would just attack relentlessly, and it would just be like, when you've got a wall and you've got molasses up against it, there's nothing you can do if you can't build on the other side, because you built on the other side. You're just watching it destroy your walls, and there's nothing to be done, really.
Yeah, the people you're trying to save are doing a good enough job of blocking tiles. We don't need the molasses doing it too.
Yeah. This is also, when I say there's 2 songs, there's actually 1 song, and I just took 2 of the tracks from the other song, put them in this song, and slowed one of them down by half. I was like, that'll do. I don't want to use this music editor anymore.
Oh, there's a question in chat. Any weighing of the pieces involved? Which ones are gonna come up next, so you don't get like...
Nope. Totally random.
Ooh.
Totally random.
Well, that reaches the end of our block. Thank you, Alligator, for coming on.
Thank you. It's interesting to actually have to talk about a thing I've made.
You made a really cool thing, so I'm glad you came on to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to join in as many of these future jams as I can.
Do
it's
it.
A lot of fun.
You know you want to.
I know I want to.
Do more jams.
Everybody do more jams.
Also, thank you to Raujinn for coming on with Oh Darn, the Time Machine We Stole Has Gone Haywire. And thank you, Xibanya, for co-hosting.
Always a pleasure.
We'll be back on tomorrow. Oh, sure. We'll be back on tomorrow at 5 p.m. with many more games to play.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.